What's up, everybody? It's Soren Baker here on Unique Access Entertainment. As always, please hit that subscribe button. It's right down there and it's free. That enables us to keep coming to you guys as often as possible with as many interviews as possible. So please hit that subscribe button, like our content, share, talk about it, be about it, each one, teach one. And we appreciate your guys' support in getting us this far. Now, today we have the honor and the privilege of being joined again by Daddy O from Stetsasonic. Thank you for coming through,
sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes, always an honor and privilege to talk to you. And you know, people may have seen the first segments from our first marathon interview. If they haven't, here's a link to
right. Absolutely.
They need to go watch those.
I had the baldy then.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're like a whole new man.
Yeah, I know, right?
But one of the things I find that's so interesting, given how the music industry used to work and how things took so much more time to do, especially record.
Right.
Compared to how things are now.
Yeah.
I was always curious with the stuff you did with 783 and then working on Info Gear and other things you were doing at around this time. Were you doing those things separately? Were you taking breaks to go work with 783? Like how was this happening?
So most of the time I would find a studio that I liked, because that's the way most producers worked at that time. And I would just do it. So when Paul and we didn't do it together, of course, but we were in the same band. When Paul and I began to produce, the first place that we began to produce was out of Calliope Studios, because we were working out of Calliope. And so anything, I brought Latifah there, I brought 783 there, like anybody that I was working on, I would just bring them in there. So the Stetsasonic sessions were definitely more concentrated and more intense. A lot of times we do back-to-back days, but I learned real early, and I'm thankful for some of the engineers that I work with really early, about breaks. And in two ways. One way is like taking a day off break, but another way is just walking down the block for your ears break and coming back. And so those kind of breaks might have been 4 days on with Stetsasonic, maybe 1 day free, and then something I was producing I would do on another day. So yeah, I mean, but some of those things I was doing simultaneously. I mean, like kind of working 2 projects at one time. That didn't affect me at all, because one of the huge benefits of being in Stetsasonic is it's a band. So everything is not dependent upon me and everything's not predicated upon me. So right. Paul, you got this. D.B., you got this. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like that pass the ball thing when you're in a band is phenomenal. You know what I mean? I mean, even to this day, so we're working on a few records, right? We're working on this new album, and so the Light's basically A&R on the record. So he's telling us which songs to use and all of that kind of stuff. But then Wise kind of becomes the writer, Flintstone.
Okay.
Like the guy that sparks the writer thing. So the Light says, "Oh, we're going to use this, or we need to use something like this." And then that thing gets made, however it gets made. A lot of times it's D telling me something, me calling Doc, C-Doc, and C-Doc giving it back to me, right? And so now we got it, and then I'll go to Wise and say, where are we going with this? Like what, you know what I'm saying? Like, what do you hear? Like that. And it frees me up for whatever I'm doing. Stuff with my tech company, stuff with my grandkids, it doesn't matter. But, that passing the ball is way easier than, doing it by yourself. So, so a lot of those records like 783, Latifah, a bunch of the stuff that I was doing, I had help with Stetsasonic.
Okay. And with Latifah obviously was also on Tommy Boy like Stetsasonic was, but 783 was on Geffen, which right. Tommy Boy in this 87, 88 era when you would have been doing Full Gear, successful, but it's not
Geffen.
It's not Geffen. Right. So what was the difference that you noticed, if any, with how you were treated? And I don't mean good or bad, but I just mean, was the procedure different?
I don't know. I don't know if I noticed the difference because I was just getting into the producer seat. So that's kind of like just getting into the director chair. You know, everything, the process for me was always the same, you know, meaning making sure that I got the engineer that I love, that knows my stuff, that knows how to work with me, making sure that the machines that I want to use are in that studio, because this is the day and time that we're talking about. If there's not an SB12 in there, or if there's not this in there, they got to rent it and put it in there, because a lot of studios didn't have, you know, studios would later, after hip hop, begin to buy keyboards and drum machines. They didn't own them prior to us, because most of the time they were recording rock bands that either only needed them on occasion, but they all had drum sets in there, you know, that kind of thing, right? So, you know, just having what I needed in the room with my engineer, and then I was fine. So I didn't see it as any different, because it was still going to be the same way. They still got to pay the studio the same way. They still all got to give me a food budget the same way. They got to do the same things. So it's the same thing. I mean, it might have been a little more G, you know what I mean, when I was producing records, because now I am the person. You know, yes, this is the act, but I'm the guy. You know, whereas, you know, with Stetsasonic, I'm definitely there, but you know, we're all kind of making decisions. We did everything by committee. So that might have felt different, but label wise, it never felt different, because it was the same. You know, this is the studio I use, this is the engineer I use, this is the stuff that I need.
So how did the 783 work come about?
We from the same neighborhood.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we all from East New York. Sean and Brett are from East New York. Those are the homies. They from on the Cozine side. I'm a little more toward the Hegeman side, but those are the homies. And then I'm trying to figure out, I don't know, I have to look chronologically, and you the historian, so you can. If I knew if I was doing Cookie Crew first.
Well, I was going to get to them for a different reason in a second.
Yeah,
but
because of Muggs, that could have been, I mean, we knew each other, but that could have been the segue. It could have been through Muggs, because Muggs was working with the Cookie Crew.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. But with 783, with Hit 'Em Again and One Half Bold and Another Half Inch, the thing I was always intrigued is Hit 'Em Again, relatively speaking, of course, but with the horns, there's a lot more music in the track, whereas One Half Bold and Another Half Inch, it's just almost drums.
Right.
So not only are the styles so different sonically and stylistically, but it's for the same album with a different group other than Stet. So creatively, was that something more that you were bringing, or that something they were asking or wanting such a difference?
No, it was something that I did, but I think my process is pretty much the same now. Like, I just do what I feel. So sometimes I feel something very stripped down after hearing what they're gonna do lyrically, or sometimes I might make the beat first and then they do it. But I do the same thing all the time. You probably hear more of my production with musical stuff than not. There are a few songs that I did that are stripped down. Top Billing happens to be one. You know, the Boulder song is one. There's a couple of others, kind of few in between the tracks. You hear this kind of minimalistic thing, and that comes from the Parks, that comes from hip hop, that comes from turntablism and turntables being in my mind and stuff. But for the most part, I just wanted to make at least what I call in my head, and I still call it in my head, hip hop music, right? So it's not just hip hop, but it's hip hop music. So, you know, when we back in the day and we rapping in the Parks, we're rapping to, yes, you know, that it's true about the get down part and all of that, but there's a lot of times we rapping on musical things too, as long as they're instrumental. You know what I mean? So, and then later on, as producers, hip hop producer, early hip hop producers. I'm in that early hip hop producer group. We learned that we could do like song format in our records. Remember coming off the street, I remember this, man. And it's on the subject, but a little more extensive. When Stetsasonic came to Tommy Boy, we had a song called Stetsasonic, which was later on to be the first single called Just Say Stet. But it was just a routine for us. DB made the beat. The beat was the same. DB made everything on that, right? He did the drums, he did all of that. We ended up adding Wise a little later and Paul later, but DB had made that. You know, he had did the boom and he had did all of that. And it was a routine called Stetsasonic. And we just was rap. Some of those records, some of those rhymes were the same rhymes. Some we expanded on, some we shortened, right? When we went to Tom Silverman, he says, Daddy-O, where's the hook? I say, what's a hook? You mean that part in the record that goes like a chorus? He's like, yeah. I'm like, we don't have no hook. And he's like, well, that thing that you say at the end, if you can't say it all, just say stat, that could be the hook. So we went back and redid it that kind of way. So we were just learning. So that's the point. We were just learning how to do the song format thing and everything. The other thing that's really interesting about that particular time, like that I'm doing Latifah, Cookie Crew, 783, you know, all that, those early hip hop records I produced outside my band, ton of that stuff is experimental.
Yeah.
A goo gob of that stuff is experimental. I mean, people still don't know that the pros is Miles Davis. They probably think I got it from some dub plate. That's Miles Davis.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So we are just moving around and just trying things. So a lot of times it just end up being great tries. You know, and it worked. And then if the band I'm working with, like in the case of 783, the band I'm working with, if they liked it, then that was good. It's a go. Let's rock.
Okay. Interesting stuff. Now with Info Gear comes out in 88, which is also It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. Also in 88. And with the, remember you had told me in one of our last interviews, everybody should watch it there, about how the tour bus being with Public Enemy helped a lot. But with the Night of the Living Baseheads reference to you, did you hear that as it was being made, or did you hear it when
I did not. I did not. So I'll tell you one interesting thing about those two albums. Mm-hmm. We made both of those albums in Green Street.
Okay.
And we were in the studio together. So I always look at them as sister albums. You know, because that we got you still smoking that shit from and the bag popped. You know what I mean? Like it's a lot of things that we was listening to each other, hanging out together, kind of compare, even though, you know, Bomb Squad had a totally different musical style than we did. But we learned how to do a lot of things together. But that, I didn't hear that until it was out.
And what was your reaction? Or do you remember where you were? Or
I know. I don't remember where I was, and I still to this day don't tell people who, I don't know. I probably never did, but I don't tell people who that was that we were talking about. But I remember the conversation. Like I remember it because we had that conversation on the bus.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's like Chuck D sees me as this almost like a guru. And so when I talk to him, even to this day, he pretty much absorbs everything I say. But the best thing about Chuck is, like, I don't know, people who have children can relate to what I'm getting ready to say. You got certain kids You tell them stuff, it seems like it goes through one ear and comes out the other. You got other children that you tell them things and you can totally see that they absorbed it and used it. And so that's Chuck D. And it's not only Daddy-O he does it with. Like, I'm not trying to make myself any, because he's learned things from, I've watched him learn things from Hammer. I've watched him learn things from Mix-a-Lot. And he really takes these things like, oh, wow, this is a lesson. So sometimes it goes in his music lyrically, sometimes it goes in his music, sometimes it goes in his lectures, you know, that type of situation. But, you know, I always honored, you know, a lot of that stuff we all got from Mel and them, you know, because Mel and them used to be at a party and say, Grandmaster Caz is in the house and Ruby D is in the house. I see my man Kumo D, he's in the house. Like, they would call out, you know, guys that was in other groups, because it's like, this is who we are. You know what I mean? So throughout Stet Records, you'll hear us mention people, you'll hear KRS-One mention people, you hear Chuck mention people, because that's our thing. Like, it's us, you know what I mean? And man, you know, the beginning of that thing, man, I mean, as dope as it is, as great memories as it is, you know, I said this once before, it was like being in a war in the very beginning. Because everybody hated us, man. Everybody hated us. Radio hated us. The R&B singers hated us. I always mention Whitney and Luther, because they was the top two and they hated us. You know what I mean? And it was like, damn. You know what I mean? We couldn't get a break. And I said this to you before. We never really looked at it. A lot of us, I know Chuck D and Public Enemy is this way, because I know Hank and everybody else, Keith, Eric, Flavor, Griff. We never looked at this thing like it was something totally new. We saw ourselves as an extension of the Black music that came before us. And so we felt totally shunned when they looking at us like, y'all not us. Like, huh? You know what I'm saying? So it created a camaraderie to create a line. Like, my man Daddy-O once said to me, like, so crazy, right? We did a show a couple of years ago, right before COVID. And Chuck goes out and sometimes he takes me out and he just takes me by myself. And that's how I start my show out that way anyway, when I do my solo shows. My solo shows start from me being in the back. Listen, I see it on their faces. First come, first serve faces. And then when it goes, my man Daddy-O once said, my man Daddy-O, my DJ, and then I come out. Chuck did it with his mouth in Canada, and it was dope. And I came out. It was fly. But yeah, that's just a camaraderie thing, man. Like, you know, it was us against, you know, I guess I'm coining Tupac, but it was us against the world.
Be sure to check out The History of Gangster Rap by Soren Baker. He's official.
History of Gangster Rap features exclusive interviews with Ice-T, Snoop Dogg, MC Ren, the D.O.C, and dozens of others. The History of Gangster Rap, a definitive look at how Los Angeles changed rap forever.
In Los Angeles, the streets definitely set the tone of the hip-hop music.
At 19, I got a $50,000 car.
My whole angle always was, I'll be street, but I will always tell you the horrors that go along with this life.
There will be penalties and casualties for just wearing the wrong color in somebody's neighborhood.
And once gangster rap made it from the streets to the TV, the genre exploded.
With Fab 5 on Yo MTV Back with NWA.
Yo MTV, it just catapulted us from being local heroes to national gangbang rappers.
The History of Gangster Rap discusses it all from 1980 up till today.
It's always gonna be shit happening in the streets. You know what I mean? So it's always gonna be something to talk about.
The History of Gangster Rap in stores now.